Okay, we'll start by, this is the PIC meeting for January 14th. We'll start by honoring the land. Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations in the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Ottawadron, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions, land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors that walk before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us. So to start with introductions of who's here on our PIC committee tonight, we'll start with, my name is Andrea Chan. I am the PIC co-chair and I represent Oakville. And I'm just going to call your name and then you just can come off mute and do that. We'll go with our co-chair, Zina.
Hi, everyone. This is Zina Almudaris with you. I am the co-chair for the PIC and I'm representing from Oakville.
Thank you, Zina. Sherry?
Hi, I'm Sherry White and I represent Mackenzie Smith Bennett from Acton.
Thank you, Sherry. Ali?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ali Chaudhry, and I represent Bruce Trail Public School from Milton, Ontario.
Thank you, Ali. Sarah?
Hi, everyone. Sarah Suhail. I represent Ryerson Public School from Burlington.
And Lauren?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Ives, and I represent Milton.
And I just want to chime in and welcome just a special announcement for Lauren, because Lauren is actually now working as an occasional teacher in the Halton District School Board, which is allowable that you continue as a PIC parent member as long as it's declared at the first meeting that happens, and that's tonight. So congratulations, Lauren, on your appointment, and thank you for remaining as a parent member. We appreciate it.
I appreciate being part of this. Thank you.
And we have regrets from Nuri Soni tonight. Our trustees, go ahead, Jean.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's Jean Gray reporting in from the sunny skies of Halton Hills.
Thank you, Jean. And Tanya?
Hi, I'm trustee Tanya Rocha. I represent Oakville's wards 3 and 6, and that's all of Eastern Oakville. Skies are not so sunny here in Oakville right now. Nighttime.
Could I add that Kelly Amos has just communicated with Tanya and myself to say that she is going to be joining us very shortly.
Thank you, Jean.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. And then our board staff today, Steve Oliver.
Hi there, Steve Oliver. Also echoing Jean's comments about sunny Halton Hills. I'm the vice principal at Georgetown District High School, and I represent school administration, and I'm a resource for the group.
Thank you, Steve. And John.
Greetings. I'm John Pennyfather. I'm superintendent of education, and I'm lucky enough to have parent engagement as part of my portfolio. That's why I'm here.
Thank you, John. Let's start with the passing of the minutes from December 3rd, 2020. I noticed one spot on it, and it's a small one, John. Sorry, not John, Steve. Under the superintendent piece, it just said John's name under action instead of who, and that's the only thing I saw that needed to be changed. Is everybody good with the minutes? Can I have a motion to approve? Ali? And second, okay, Sherry as well. Sherry seconded. Thank you. And I'll hand it over to Zina for our presentation tonight.
Okay. So tonight we have the presentation. It is the Halton District School Board, the Human Rights, Equity Action, and Accountability Plan, the way for word. So this introduction on this presentation will be done by three amazing people. Rob Itoff, which is the Superintendent of Education, Mary Marshall, System Principal Equity, Dr. Jewel Amoa, Health and District School Board Equity Advisor. So welcome, guys, and please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Sina, and big shout out to some familiar faces out there. Ali, great to see you again, as with many others around the table. We know our time with you is brief, so we're going to try to do our best to cover a lot of ground in a short period of time by giving you a high-level overview of a really critical document for our board. Over the last number of years, we have been really guiding our equity work based upon the ministry's plan, the Ontario Equity Action Plan. And but over the last, really over the last year, I would say, we have been working on our own plan that certainly aligns with that plan and the expectations therein, but very much personalizes it towards our situation here in Halton. So in the comment box, I've just put a link that'll take you to the website, to the board website, where we have equity and inclusive education. And on that board website, you'll see a little yellow banner that says you can view the Human Rights Equity Action and Accountability Plan there. So for your information, you can dive into that later on. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Jewel Amoa. She is our Human Rights and Equity Advisor. She joined us just prior to COVID happening, so I don't know whether there's any responsibility there on her behalf. But shortly after she started in January, we ended up shutting down the system. But she's been a huge asset to our board, and she's going to provide a little bit of context for some of the primary components of the plan. And then Mary, our system principal for equity, is going to take you through some of the particulars. So I'm passing it over to Jewel.
Thanks, Rob. Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all. So as Rob said, I still say I'm fairly new to the board, having joined just a year ago, and then the world changed. And so this is the platform through which I've been able to meet people. So nice to meet you all on a screen, and hopefully one day, perhaps by the year 2030, we'll be all out of this pandemic situation, and I might even be able to meet people in person. Just wanted to talk to you a little bit about our plan, Human Rights Equity Action and Accountability Plan. So we call it the Way Forward. And I'm going to pause. Mary, am I pausing for you to show slides, or should I just keep talking? I'll pause. Okay. So maybe I'll just, oh, here we go. Thank you. So as Rob mentioned, our work in this plan, this Action and Accountability Plan, is really influenced by the ministry's directive, the Equity Action Plan, and the particular directive around creating safe, inclusive, and engaging learning and working environments for students and staff. And so the way we think we can do that is through this three-pronged process. Mary will talk to you a bit about the specific contents of the plan, and I'm really going to give you a high-level overview of the process that the plan sort of outlines. And so these three plans are strategy, action, and accountability. And we talk about them as being interdependent, interconnected, and one looping into the other, and so on. So we start with strategy, and really that is what it suggests. It's just the plan. An idea to do something to move forward. In this context, strategy really involves collaborative engagement, collaborative action, right? So how are we going to work together to focus on inclusion, to focus on that commitment towards safe and inclusive learning and working environments? Once we think about what our strategy is, the next part is really about implementation. That's just the actioning. Whatever the plan is, whatever the strategy is. And it doesn't sound difficult. It seems like the next obvious step, but sometimes we get stuck in really moving from strategy or planning into action. And so that stickiness could be, oh, these are really new ideas. We haven't thought completely about how we're going to approach things from a fully human rights oriented perspective. We haven't thought about all the specific components around equity and inclusion. We focus more on, issues around core curriculum. But issues of equity and inclusion and human rights are really no different from issues of literacy or math engagement. They are really about building and strengthening student achievement, supporting students and supporting staff. And so what we've been encouraging people to think about is that don't be stuck in thinking about, you know what, these actions, these strategic actions around equity, inclusion, and human rights are new. They might be new, but they're all aimed at the same process, the same end result. Right? And when we talk about actioning the strategy, we of course think to accountability. And accountability, the idea of it is certainly not new in the context of delivering education or even in the context of the workplace. Students are accountable for their performance. Employees are accountable also for their performance and their delivery. The notion of accountability in the way forward is really about us holding one another accountable as a school board system for that core result in the middle there, human rights, equity, and inclusion, right? And so what does accountability mean? And so sometimes this relies on data metrics. So data is always going to give us hard information and perspectives around accountability. And sometimes where there is no baseline data, we take the form of accountability in terms of leveraging relationships, right? Because we have relationships in the school environment or relationships in the parent community, then we're able to hold one another accountable or hold other entities accountable to meet that middle core objective. So really what I just wanted to talk about was just those three components: strategy, action, accountability. Mary's going to take us through, as I said, some details, and in the back of your mind, just think about how that circular process overlaps with those core strategic lines.
Thanks, Jewel. So as Rob and Jewel have both mentioned, this plan really pulls together in a comprehensive and strategic and intentional way the priority areas for our board as a system. This one slide really is a bit of a sense of what you will find when you go to the link that Rob shared earlier in the chat box. And the overview that is posted there provides you with a sense of what the priorities are, the commitment statements on the part of the board, the strategy, actions, and accountability pieces that Jewel spoke to, but primarily focus on the strategies. And the full document is about 30 pages and is undergoing another revision to ensure that we've got enough voices reflected in there. So what you'll see on that board website are the strategies. And I want to share those with you now and provide you with a bit of a sense of some of the actions that are already underway this year and where we're headed with this work. So the first area within the plan speaks to classroom instruction, school and workplace practice, and the 4 strategy areas and priorities are identified here. Some of these will sound familiar to you if you have been watching what's been happening in the board in the last 3 to 4 years since the release of the Ontario Equity Action Plan in 2017. Specifically culturally responsive and relevant teaching. And so again, the plan is not all new. It's pulling these pieces together and really shifting that the work to, as Jewel referenced earlier, coming at it from a human rights perspective and always grounding our thinking there. So these 4 areas are fleshed out as far as strategies within the plan and have specific actions attached to them. The second area speaks to leadership, governance, and human resources. And here you'll see a real connection across both the academic side as well as the corporate side of the organization with respect to leadership development, hiring, promotion of staff, decision-making practices within our organization, grounding all of those within human rights as well as competencies within our system. We also look at strategies and structures that will promote and ensure human rights and equity. And so we'll speak to that specifically as an action in just a moment. And then ongoing professional development with respect to equity and inclusion and human rights for all employee groups in the organization, academic as well as corporate side. Area 3 and 4 are included on this slide, and as parents in the Halton District School Board, you will have received by now a number of email communications through School Messenger about the upcoming student census, whether it was an invitation to come to some of our information sessions that we've been holding, or whether it's information about the actual census itself that is going to be beginning later this month and then rolling out in phases over the course of the winter. So that is a significant area within, or a significant strategy for us within Area 3. But then all the actions that will fall out from that and how that data will be used in a way to really inform and improve the outcomes and the achievement and success and well-being for all of our students within our organization. And then finally, within organizational cultural change, we're really looking at how we as an organization center human rights and equity within all of the actions that we're undertaking. And so when there are opportunities to rethink how we are doing things, we start from that perspective and begin without considering what we've always done, but rather what we can do, what we need to remove, what we need to change, and how we need to rethink our actions and our processes within the organization. So that was a really quick overview of the 4 areas within the plan. And as I said, if you go to the link that Rob shared with you earlier, you'll be able to see some more specifics with respect to the priority statements and the commitments that the board is upholding as part of this plan. One of the specific actions, though, that has been undertaken this fall and has been part of the focus work for professional development in our schools with our academics, staff, and students as well, falls within Area 2, and it's one of the structures that really speaks to promoting human rights and addressing discriminatory practices. And that is the re-release of the discriminatory and harmful language protocol. So this is all within a year-long focus on dismantling racism within our school board and is part of ongoing learning for staff. And so back in October, we released an overview of the new plan that we're speaking to you about tonight, as well as the protocol, and staff have been working with students in schools to reinforce not the plan per se, because it is responsive, but the conditions and how we create conditions that will engage and protect and support all of our learners. So I do want to share with you tonight the video that's been produced. You're getting a bit of a sneak preview, a pre-screening, if you will. Since theaters are closed, we're bringing it to you in your homes this evening and give you a chance to see this video that has been prepared for release with our community, with our families, but we wanted to share it with you tonight before it is released. So I'm going to play it for you now, and then we'll have an opportunity to take some questions following this.
So Mary?
Yep.
Yeah, so maybe we'll stop it and we'll rewind it and we'll ask everybody to turn their cameras off. Yeah, because it tends to run better if all the cameras are off.
The Halton District School Board is harmful language.
That's a little trick that we've learned doing some PD sessions that I completely forgot about.
The Halton District School Board is committed to creating and maintaining safe and inclusive learning environments free from discrimination for students. Through school and classroom actions that reflect and reinforce the principles of the Ontario Human Rights Code, staff in HDSB schools strive to create and maintain learning environments where students feel safe and included. Should incidents of discrimination or hate occur in our schools, HDSB staff are committed to responding quickly using the discriminatory and harmful language protocol. This protocol responds to discriminatory language used against people based on the protected grounds in the Ontario Human Rights Code.
Discriminatory and harmful language causes pain and trauma to individuals to whom it is directed. This protocol provides clear expectations for how staff respond when harm is caused. Staff respond by interrupting the language, providing an explanation why the language is harmful and discriminatory, ensuring support is provided for those harmed, and reporting the incident to school administration for further follow-up and accountability.
As a school administrator, I've found that using the protocol supports students and families who have been harmed, builds broader understanding of the impact of discriminatory and harmful language, and provides a focus for the proactive work necessary in our school to build more inclusive spaces for all students and families. First, it is important for students and families to know that we take all situations involving discriminatory language very seriously. When I work with a student who has been harmed, I want to ensure that they know I am there to support them. I also work with their family to reassure them that we as a school will always respond with action to these situations. I also need to engage with the student who has committed the harm to ensure they understand the significant impact of their words and actions. It is important to dig into the learning with them as part of the response. And finally, I take time to reflect and consider what actions we need to take as a school community to understand why racist and discriminatory comments and actions are occurring. These help with the development of proactive measures that support the overall improvement of our school environment.
The HDSB protocol supports the proactive measures taken by all staff members to intentionally create inclusive learning spaces for every student. This proactive work includes implementing culturally responsive instruction and anti-oppressive practices where students see themselves reflected in the curriculum, resources, and learning environment and feel valued as members of the school community.
Ensuring safe and inclusive learning environments for students is a priority for the HDSB. We know when students feel safe and included, they're more engaged and successful. The discriminatory and harmful language protocol is one of many actions in the Halton District School Board's Human Rights Equity Action and Accountability Plan, the way forward. Aligned with the goals outlined in the Halton District School Board's multi-year plan, the way forward commits to creating and maintaining safe, inclusive learning and working environments free from discrimination for students, their families, employees, and members of the public. We are committed to this critical work and with your support, ensuring all feel included, valued, and respected.
Thanks very much, Mary, and everybody can put their cameras back on now. Sorry about that, but yeah, sometimes it tends to be, a video tends to be a little less glitchy when the cameras are off. So that's really the end of our presentation for you. We're going to be doing lots of promotion around the discriminatory and harmful language protocol. You're going to be seeing information coming home into your mailboxes as parents. The video will be going out, and that's meant to be not only an awareness building tool, but it's also meant to be hopefully a tool that'll be useful for parents to help reinforce with their kids at home, because that's certainly something that we heard when developing this protocol, that any sort of resources that can be also useful for parents at home is something to think about. And the reason why this is such a big initiative for us this year is in talking with kids over the last while, and particularly this past summer. We heard over and over again how problematic it is for our students. We actually produced a video that we shared with trustees and we've shared with staff as part of our dismantling racism training this past fall. And in the video, the kids were really clear that staff generally are great about addressing inappropriate language like swearing and so forth in the classroom. But more often than not, less comfortable and often, use of the N-word or inappropriate derogatory terms referencing the LGBTQ community, and so on and so forth. Often those things sometimes don't get addressed, and they are only met with silence, and we can't have that. So hence the prioritization of this being really critical in terms of our anti-racism work and anti-oppression work within the Halton District School Board. So I'll turn it back over to you, Zena, and the group if there were any questions.
Thank you so much, Rob. Thanks, all of you, for this nice presentation. It is really, really informative, and it is a pleasure to work with you in this matter. Actually, it is the good thing for the community and for our kids in the first place. Any question from anyone?
So we're going to use the hands up
Yes.
model, and I see Ali has his hand up first.
Folks, I just wanted to say thank you for that presentation. It was great. The question I have is, this has to be a multi-layered approach because there's so many people involved within the school community. Have we considered approaching the kids, our students, through social media, setting up an Instagram account, maybe even TikTok, but some way that we can relate directly to students regarding what's appropriate and what's inappropriate behavior? Thank you.
That's a great great question, Ali, and certainly we do have our different platforms. So as part of my role in terms of communications in the board, some of my staff are moving the information not just out through Twitter, but through Instagram, which is really what the kids are more interested in. As my daughter tells me, Twitter's dead. It's only for old people. So we make sure it gets on the major platforms of Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. But I really do like your idea about building a more comprehensive student engagement strategy, because a critical part of our plan, which Jewel referenced, is the accountability piece. Those who will hold us most accountable, or should be holding us most accountable, are our students. If they see that things are not being addressed, or they themselves, feel like they need to address something, then they also need to, build skills and be aware. So I appreciate that comment. We'll definitely take that back. Thank you.
Jewel, did you have something to respond to that? Is that okay? Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Rob actually stole a little bit of my thunder. I just wanted to say that when I spoke about accountability, I did talk about data, and I did talk about other metrics or other points of information, and student voice is a key point that drives much of our work. And often we go directly to the students to ask them when they would like to engage and what they would like to engage about, and perhaps not so often how or on what platform. So I think the idea of the most current video platforms is a fantastic one. But we didn't miss the boat on student voice, but I think we're not precise on how exactly to find the best platform to engage them. So thanks for that, Ali.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah? Sorry, Ali, do you mind putting your hand down? Unless you have something else to say. Thank you. Sarah, go ahead.
So Julie, you've mentioned a couple points now about data and metrics. I'm wondering if the metrics that this program will be measured against are available on the website, and if not, will they be made available in the future?
Another fantastic question. You guys are really holding us accountable this evening. So the data, for instance, that would look at, I think, some things that Mary spoke about changes in the curriculum, that is something that would happen over time. One example she spoke about also was the student census. So the student census will look at, of course, the range of identity aspects of students, but it also does look at experiential data. So over time, we'd be able to see how particularly identified students feel in terms of inclusion. So how do students who identify as members of the LGBT community, or students who may identify as racialized or indigenous or Black, or students who might identify as Hindu or Islamic or as Muslim, how do they sense the progression of their sense of inclusion in the school? So that is, or in the larger school system. That is something we'll be able to measure over time, not immediately, of course, but that is something that we've created the platform and tools for that level of assessment.
Thank you.
Rupi, thank you for joining us. You have a question?
You're on mute.
Hi, so sorry. I'm Mary. I was stuck in traffic, so apologies for joining you guys a little later than normal. So I got the ends of this video that was on, and I think that's a great initiative. My daughter is also part of the Senate, so I got to hear, I kind of sat in on her meeting and I understood what was being discussed. I'm being a parent of a child that has been discriminated from grade 9 onwards, basketball, math class. So I've actually been firsthand experiencing what my child has been going through. I think the biggest thing that my question, what I'm going to ask is, if a child is being impacted from at school amongst their peers and her teachers or their teachers, how are they able to address that and actually have some action that will come out of it rather than just get lost in the limelight? So even if we do have a platform in place, how are these children going to be provided with an assurance to say, you know what, you brought forth an issue that you're facing with. We're going to take that very seriously and we're going to address it and we're going to find a resolution and not just sweep it under the table like what I've experienced. So this is one of the reasons why I joined the committee, is because I want to create that change amongst everybody, and I want to be that voice for people that are swept under the table. And I think this is an amazing initiative, and I'm so happy that it's being brought forward at such a fast pace.
I'm going to turn it over to Mary in a second here as a principal. She certainly dealt with this. What I wanted to also inform you of is while we're addressing harmful language with students, over the last month or so, we've been also reviewing our policies and procedures related to instructional materials that we use with students. And we'll be rolling that out to the system within the next couple of months. That will also look at ensuring that teachers are not inadvertently using materials in the classroom, which can also cause harm. I know that isn't your specific question, but just wanted to show you the interrelationship between. It isn't just about the students, that we are doing lots with staff as well, but. Mary, maybe you can address the question.
Sure. Thanks, Rob. And thank you. Yes, absolutely. So you would have heard Louisa, one of our vice principals, speaking to administrators' commitment to this work and ensuring that students who are experiencing this are first and foremost felt supported, right, and heard, and that they the follow-up with the student as well as the family is explicit and transparent. So whether it is harm that has occurred as a result of an interaction with another student or with a staff member, there's a high degree of accountability. For any reports from our staff, there is actually an electronic reporting process in place that holds our administrators accountable to respond to all of these incidents. So we're able to track that as well. So there's a number of safeguards, I would say, in place there. And then within the broader scheme of the system of education, the Ontario College of Teachers Standards of Practice also require all educators, all OCT, Ontario College of Teachers qualified members under their regulatory body to be held to a certain standard. And they have recently updated those standards as well around practice in the classroom on the behalf of OCT members. So we're seeing more checks and balances in there with higher transparency. I think if at any point a student is not feeling comfortable responding to an educator that they're working with, our teachers are also now working with all of our students to share this protocol. So students should feel confident that any staff member that they feel safe and trusted can be a go-to person for them to make a report, and that it will be followed up in a timely and transparent manner. Yes, Julia, Rob, I'm not sure if I missed any of the steps in there, but I think we got most of those pieces in there. I hope that answered your question. Jewel?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yes, thanks, Mary. Era, I would sorry, Andrea. Era, I would just add as a last resort, because it is an option available to people if you feel that you've gone through the various levels that Mary has spoken about. and they aren't getting proper satisfaction from within the system, there's always the option open to people to go to the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal to file a complaint.
Thank you. Rupi, do you mind lowering your hand? Thank you. Sherry, go ahead.
I just wanted to address as well an issue that has come up. Well, it came up last year and it was addressed with the staff at the school. But from this online learning environment, we've had some issues around the days of significance and making sure that the teachers and the administration of the school are following the policies that have been set out around the, days of significance. And at the beginning of this year, when I gave my son's teacher the list, he was very eager to acknowledge those days. But the one comment that he had made with this Google Classroom and platform was that once he's entered a date that an assignment is due or there's going to be a test or something, he doesn't have the ability to alter it in the system. So if that sort of coincides with a day of significance where I've already said my child's going to be absent, or obviously there can't be a test given on that day because it's a religious day, he was like, well, I'll make sure that your son's not penalized, but I can't really change it. And I thought that was it's frustrating. It's nice to know that, it's obviously not going to be penalized, but it is, again, still frustrating because it doesn't feel like they're honoring the significance. I've had issue where the principal at our school here in Acton has said sometimes reading the days on the board calendar, because everything is listed for sort of like, everybody and everything that's followed, that they have sometimes a hard time differentiating between what would be sort of like a major day of significance and what might just be sort of like a minor holiday or observance for, somebody. And she had expressed that she wished there was a clearer way that the calendar was set up.
So Sherry, are you asking? Sherry, are you asking if there's a clearer way that the board can do that then?
That the board can do that, or again, if this sort of online learning environment and going forward with these platforms, that there's got to be a better way for the teachers to be able to edit and make changes. Then so it is the same for everybody.
Thank you. Do our guests have anything to respond to that?
Sure, I'm happy to respond to that. There are a couple of system calendars that are in place, and one of them speaks specifically, Sherry, to those dates of particular significance that we call them. So for the different faith groups in our region, we've worked with the faith leaders to identify those most significant days where there are observance practices that would be followed, and so we've shared those with our schools. Those are posted and made available to all educators, and we remind schools to try to protect those days for that very reason, so that we aren't asking students and families to have to participate in something. So those days are held as days where we ask schools not to book events or large items. They're also within our system calendar. So if the HDSB events calendar, main calendar that's linked on the public webpage, includes a much broader cross-section of observances beyond those that would be of most significance in the different faith groups. And so there are a number, and it is difficult to distinguish which is from which if you are not familiar with the different faith groups. But so those two pieces, but the one date of particular significance that we do share with our schools, we link into a regular update. So I'm sorry that that happened to your son, Sherry, this fall, and that was an experience that I know you and I have had these conversations on a number of occasions, trying to protect those days. I think it's important that we continue to remind schools and help them become familiar with practices outside of their own faith practice. Jewel, it looks like you've got your hand up and you might want to respond to something here as well.
Thanks, Mary. Sherry, thanks for your question, which again, I think is fantastic. So, and I think Mary has responded to you in terms of the procedural logistics around the issue. And I think the broad issue perhaps that you're speaking about is religious accommodation. But when you talk about the online platform, and we've certainly been speaking about inclusion, I think your question also raises the issues, how do we think about inclusiveness in an online environment? So what does that mean in terms perhaps of varying requirements or adapting processes? And so what occurs to my mind, and I'll have to think a bit more about this and flesh it out and see how this might be able to apply across the system, dependent upon, of course, I think, different grades and different subject matters. But I think if we're looking at providing for inclusion in an online format, given all the complexities and challenges of teaching and learning online, on the issue you raise about assignment due dates, there might be scope for a range of dates. So an assignment that would be due between Monday and Wednesday, perhaps, which doesn't then identify a particular fixed date, which might put a particular student at a disadvantage for having to make the request for an exception, which essentially, which is what an accommodation is, right? Say that they need something different than the others because of adherence to faith requirements. I think in the online environment, there's scope to be flexible in how we provide for inclusion. So that was something that occurred to me to really think about, what does inclusion mean? And we still think about it in sort of the bricks and mortar classroom environment and haven't given a lot of scope to how that applies in an online environment. So I appreciated the question. So thanks.
Thank you. I think we're all trying to figure out how things work in that online virtual environment in many different ways. Zena, your hand's up?
Yes, thank you. So I have a question. I know that now there is this equity and inclusive education system. It is in the board. But I think there will be a difference between their system that is existed and if it is implemented. So how to be sure that it will be implemented in the school, how to be sure that the school will follow this system, and if it is not follow, there is any way that as a parent, they can go to the equity website. There is any tab that they can have any complaint or any report to be submitted directly to you. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for the question, Zena. And yes, that's always the challenge, right? You can have all kinds of great plans, and that's what we've actually heard from parents is, you've told us that you were going to address these things in the past, and you know what? We don't see any. Our teachers still look the same as they did, 50 years ago. Where's the diversity, right? You keep saying you're working on it, but we're not seeing it. So certainly, probably one of the most difficult pieces of the plan is the accountability measures. And I know we've kind of just touched upon that today. I'll just give a very quick plug to our student census. This is why it's so critical that you're out there and you are advocating that parents and students complete the student census, because it's going to give us valuable data that other boards have already had for years, like the Toronto District School Board, and very much allows them to identify really specific needs within the system because they can cross-correlate the data. But I know that's not your question. In terms of accountability, certainly one reason why we're doing such a broad communication piece is to make sure all the stakeholders are really aware. So if we use the example of the discriminatory and harmful language protocol, we have been working with staff and with administrators for sure over the course of the fall. And but by making all levels of the organization, as well as the broader public, parents, kids, aware that this is what's supposed to happen, that when that there's a lot of good pressure. You know, it's a whole pressure support piece. We've provided lots of support. We'll continue to do that. But there also has to be, and I think that's what you're kind of referencing, what's the pressure piece when people aren't doing it? That's where the monitoring, the broad accountability and the monitoring piece comes in. So at the highest level of accountability and monitoring, trustees right at this very moment have been discussing the creation of a broad group that would have a lot of a community membership on it, or significant percentage on the group. And a big part of their role would be to monitor our plan and our actions, and say as a board, okay, bring us forward, show us, how you're implementing this, what's going well, what isn't going well, what other resources may be required. And finally, just as a superintendent, we all have a supervision responsibilities for specific families of schools. I'm moving to Oakville in a few weeks out of Burlington and taking over the White Oaks family of schools. I'm going to be working with Trustee Amos. Haven't been back to Oakville in 10 years, so this is going to be fun. But we've been working very specifically, as has the equity team, with our every one of our school superintendents, giving them, when you're out speaking with principals, giving them questions to ask, asking those important questions. What's happening here? What's working well? Do you have staff members who are not buying into this? How can we support that? What do we need to do? So we're at the very initial stages of implementation, but you're absolutely right. In order to get everybody on the bus, so to speak, and moving in the right direction, we need to be looking at not only support, but a little bit of healthy pressure as well. And ultimately, we're hoping some of that will come from their colleagues and peers, right? So if I'm doing this with my class, and so is everybody else on this floor, but there's one teacher who isn't, then there's that healthy challenge and questioning sometimes of why might that be, and is it a lack of comfort? Is it a lack of will? Is it a lack of skill? That's really where those school administrators, in terms of their supervision capacity, really comes into play.
Thank you.
Thank you. And at that's going to be our last question, or this one will be, but I will say thank you so much. And I may be biased here because we're in Halton, but I think that Halton is doing a fantastic job. They're moving this conversation forward. And if I see what's happening in other boards, I'm just really proud of what Halton's doing for the equity and inclusion piece. So thank you for being here tonight. And Zina, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Joelle, for this amazing presentation. So now we will go ahead with the superintendent report. So I can give that to John so that he can update about the program, the PIC liaison representative meeting, and the program. So please go ahead, John.
Thank you, and thanks to our intrepid team from Equity, and you're welcome to stay, of course, or we know that you're doing a lot of these, so you have to plug in and out and value your own time as well. But thank you for being here. We really do appreciate it. As we're recording the meetings, so I think this will be, and last time we had almost 100 hits. So if we can advertise and get that up, this is just another way that we can get the message out. And also thanks to our PIC folks here for asking such great questions, because that's what we need to have happen here, so that the people watching know that you're holding us accountable and making good recommendations and communicating to the board what you're thinking, because that is the mandate of our of PIC. Regarding the PRO grants, the applications have been sent out to principals, council chairs, and PIC reps. They're due on the 29th. We can turn around the approvals very quickly. We did last year. It was a little scuffly, but we did our first try with a Google Doc application, and this one is very quick. And we'll turn them around by February 2nd to let people know that they have them, that they've been successful. We've had 7 schools apply already, so that's really heartening. It's a $500 grant. Schools apply, as I said, by Google form. The follow-up, the schools have to do a report. It's also a Google form, and we streamlined it from the one, it's about half as long as last year, so we think it can be done by you know, with the principal can get in an environment like this with their PIC rep and their council chair, and they can quickly go through and do the report, and then we compile them to send them back to the ministry. Up until last year, school councils and communicated directly with the ministry and applied directly to the ministry for these grants. Now they give us the money, and then we have to follow their follow what's the criteria in order to award the grants. But we're also now responsible for tracking and reporting on it. So that's why we're trying to create this very streamlined system. So it's not a lot of busy work for the council chairs and the PIC reps and the principals, and it's just the data we need to get them going. So get some good projects happening. Because we're in a COVID-19 environment, and we need to rely on a virtual platform, the scope of the projects that will be approved will be reduced this year. The 4 bullets that we sent out to folks were that it would be virtual parent workshops, which can be pretty broad, virtual parent information sessions with guest speakers, virtual screening of film for parents that supports the outcomes stated by the ministry, and also parent resources. They could be looking ahead, collecting a parent library, or if there's something timely now that they want to get some parent resources, that's a good thing too. The ministry gives us these this PRO grant money, so to support the following outcomes, and that is provide a safe and welcoming school environment, maintain open communication with teachers, respect parents as valued partners within the education system, and also help keep parents informed about the content of the Ontario curriculum. So that's the criteria by which we'll be judging and approving those applications. And then the other topic was we have a PIC liaison reps meeting coming up on January 21st. We'll send the invite out tomorrow. We sent the save the date out much earlier. The topics will be PRO grants, and hopefully I'll have some examples of folks that have done some virtual things to share with them then, because it's always more real if a school team can say, hey, we're doing this and this is how it's going to happen, or we did this in a virtual environment and it worked really well, and to give people some ideas. And then we have also our equity team, who you saw here tonight, will be at that meeting too, because we're our equity team wants to use every opportunity to get this message out. And so anytime they can connect with parents, they are like, sign us up. We want to be there. So I think that'll be really great too. And the nice thing is too, they'll get some great feedback like they did tonight from another group, and they are like yourselves. They're the mavens in their school. If they know about it, then they can spread the message there too. So that's going to be really great. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Moving on to the trustee update. Welcome, Kelly.
I thought Tanya was going to give the report.
Sorry. No, I was just welcoming you because you came later.
So just for clarification, I was going to write the report, not present it. I think Jean had a few topics. She's on it.
Yes, thank you very much. I just pull it up. I had a few ideas here to share, so let me just pull that up. Here we go. You know, the trustees are still, as always, meeting with board meetings, but also with committees of the whole meetings. And just recently, we had a meeting last week, as a matter of fact, at the board table, we accomplished these types of things. We had first a large presentation of individuals who won the Inspire Award, and that's always a high note for the Board of Trustees to start our meetings at the beginning of each month with these presentations. To all of the parents here tonight, if you could keep that in mind, that we're always looking for nominations, and there's information on the board's website as to how to nominate. Again, very streamlined, very quick form, but if you have any ideas of groups, students, volunteers, community members, school council members, whoever you might think would be eligible and would be deserving, please send your information in. At the board table last week, we also had, though, information on the capital update and close the gap update and the operating financial update. The operating financial update is a really important report for the Board of Trustees because it shows us the current state of affairs and finances. And as you can imagine, this year, it's a very different year in terms of finances, with so much money flowing in different pockets from the government at different times. And this is, of course, to address the different needs that boards are having with regards to PPE and all the other additional costs, such as the technology and things like that. So that's a sort of an up-to-date as of the moment. It's like you going to your bank and saying, how much money do we have left in the bank to get through this year? That's kind of like what that report is about. And it's really, really a good one, and one that the trustees sort of dig in on. Also, lots of work, and I think we may have mentioned this at the last meeting, but lots of work has been taking place on the naming and renaming schools policy and governance procedure. That was finally ratified, and we're really happy as a Board of Trustees to have that in place, because we know there are more schools being built in Halton and more names need to be found. So we are very happy that that's in a better place than it was only but a year ago. The most important work that the trustees see themselves in the near future beginning is the work on the search for a director of education. As you know, Stuart Miller has indicated his time has come to retire. I think that's near about halfway through August. And folks, it will take us that long to find a director. It's a very detailed, complex procedure. We're at the point right now where we have an RFP out, a request for proposal, to get an executive search team to help us find some candidates right across the country that are ready to step into the role as director. Kelly may have some points that she wants to say on that, because Kelly has been involved with the search for a director more than Tanya and myself. But that's just a few of the things. And as Rob just mentioned, we had quite a presentation at the Committee of the Whole last night on this new committee that we have forming, the Equity Committee, and we're really excited about that, and more information will flow about that in days to come. I'd like to kick it over to Kelly if you have any thoughts or other information that you'd like to share with this group tonight. Thank you.
You did a really great job there, Jean. You covered a lot of what we've been doing in the past. And the summary you did on the director search, there really isn't a lot to say because it is a process, and probably the next meeting we have, we can give you a little bit more. But right now, we're looking for the search firm that's going to help us through this process. One of the things at our last board meeting that came for approval, that was approved, was the naming and renaming of schools, because with all the new schools that are being built in Milton and in North Oakville recently, we wanted to make sure that we had a policy that was going to be something that involved the community, and we already had one, but we wanted to make it more current and up to date. And with some of the concerns around names that have come up from some individuals from the past who may have not as good a history as we thought they did, we wanted to be able to have a policy that might cover any eventualities if we had to look at renaming any schools. So that came and was approved, and just like tonight, we've done some education on the equity and some of the other things. So that's where we are at the moment. I think it's going to be a busy year with all that's going on. And if anybody has any questions.
I have a question. I'm just going to start that. In terms of searching for a new director, I know that with the ministry's decision as of late, where that person did not have to have a background in education, I'm just wondering how the trustees are looking at this piece as well, because I do know there is a little bit of uproar about that. I completely disagree as an individual, but I just want to know how you are kind of navigating those waters, I guess.
Because the educational background criteria has been taken away by the government, our search criteria are very specific, but having said that, we are open to looking at all candidates, but we still want to find the one that is going to serve us as a board and the best that we can for all students and staff. So, and if that happens to be somebody that doesn't have that educational background, who knows? But having said that, from past experience, I think somebody who's come up through the ranks and done that has a much better broad-based experience in education. So it's all going to depend on who applies and who we feel makes the best fit.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Oh, Ali?
Thanks. My question is for John. At the school level, there's a bit of confusion regarding the title of PIC Liaison Officer and Pro-Grant Rep, because the duties sound quite the same. So I was just wondering if I could get some clarification. Are those terms regarding the same position, or are they two separate? And if they are, then what's the difference? Thank you.
It's a PIC liaison. Representative is what we put in our constitution. And,
John, you're
Am I the only one hearing that like that?
Pardon me?
I think you're echoing quite a bit.
You sound like a robot. Okay. I'm going to have to go out and come back in 1 second.
That was kind of scary, wasn't it?
Will be better now, right? Yeah. So the PIC liaison rep is what we put in our bylaws, our new bylaws, to definite a school PIC liaison rep is the name, and that's the school PIC rep. I haven't used the title PRO grant rep anywhere. We're using that school PIC liaison rep, and the school council chair. That's who the information went to on that. So I know it gets confusing for folks, but we wanted to differentiate from you, who are PIC, our Parent Involvement Committee. So maybe that might be an amendment if someone comes up with a cleaner term for those folks. We could make that amendment at a future time. But that's all one and the same. The school PIC liaison rep are the people that we're going to invite to that meeting on the 21st, and they typically do the connection with their school council and help generate the project that gets the PRO grant.
No, that makes total sense. So thank you, John, for that explanation.
Thanks.
Sorry, Sarah?
John just answered it.
Oh,
so thank
okay.
you.
Okay, if there are no further questions, we'll move on to... Oh, I think, John, this is where I was going to talk about what the meeting was about last night, yes? Okay. So last night at the meeting of the whole with the trustees, they talked about, they got the committees together, the chairs of different committees together to talk about the new, sorry, I'm trying to think of what to say. I'm just going to read what the committee of the whole had put out as a background. So the Ministry of Education informs school boards to provide members of the public with participating electronic access to open board committee meetings. So giving the public two-way communication to the committees. So like what we're doing now, this is a public committee, public meeting, yet we haven't been able to do two-way communication. So now with getting the committee chairs together, we've decided to do a form of electronic question and answer. And so we're going to try that for our next meeting, I believe on the 18th. And when in-person meetings resume, boards will be required to provide both in-person and electronic means for public participation. Sorry, Zena, what were you saying?
I'm just pulling the amendment to be easier for everyone.
Thank you. So last night it was just decided that we were going to have some type of a form for Q&As. We don't have to answer all those questions right there in the committee that we're holding, in the meeting that we're holding, but it does have to be answered by the next one. If we're able to answer them right away, we can, but we just have to have a way of gathering questions from the public in these public meetings. So that's all I really had to say about that. And then we'll talk about the next meeting date. And John, is the next meeting date, that's the liaison one, correct? The 18th?
No, the PIC school liaison rep meeting is on January 21st. The meeting of this group, tonight's group, is on the 18th of February.
Oh, my mistake, sorry. Okay, does anybody have anything to add before we adjourn? Oh, John, go ahead.
No, you answered it, so keep going, pardon me.
Okay. Okay, so we'll adjourn this meeting now at 8:13 p.m.